Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of Mocast, and today we're looking at the OG tank, the one that started it all, and because of this tank, you all got to play and be viable on your PROT Paladins and Guardian Druids or whatever, starting off from Vanilla all the way to Shadowlands, PROT Warrior, baby. And who do we have today, Flame?
Today we have some of the biggest brains in the Pro Warrior community, some that you might know of, some that you might not know of. So starting from Nomeratur, guys, can you introduce yourself and tell the people who you are and what you do as a Pro Warrior or in the Pro Warrior community as a whole?
Hi, my name is Nomeratur. Friends just call me Nom or Noma. I'm fairly active in the Skyhold Warrior Discord. I'm Stormforged now for like 1 year there. So I just know a few things here and there, so yeah, pretty good. I've also raid-led this tier in Castle Nethria, but we peaked at basically 8 out of 10 Mythic, and then I just burned down and I just didn't want to do it anymore. But yeah.
Can't do it energy, man, it gets to you. All right, what about you, Pika?
Hi everybody, my name is Pika. I stream on Twitch at Pika TV. I do mainly a lot of high PROT Warrior Mythic Plus ever since Legion. I also do mainly raid DPS for my guild. We're a top 100 guild in Ascent on Emerald Dream.
Hell yeah.
And I tend to do some PROT Warrior tanking in raid as well whenever it's needed. But yeah, mainly my main focus is high-end Mythic Plus with PROT Warrior, whether it is, the worst tank in 9.0 or the best tank or looking to be one of the best tanks in 9.1. I'll always be streaming PROT Warrior content and just generally all the tank content in high Mythic Plus.
Super cool.
Right.
We're gonna have all the links for all the boys in the description for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So you can check them out. And last but not least, the one, the only, the legend, Maui.
Where's the thunderous applause? Hello, I'm Maui. I'm mainly dealing with the theoretical part of Protection Warriors. I'm dealing with the APL for Simulation Craft, and also now doubling a bit with the backend with the help of a couple of the developers there. I'm also the guide writer for Icy Veins, and in general, just doing the theoretical things for Protection Warriors. So I don't have to play the game. I can just theorize everything on Excels, and
Yeah, and also a little secret about Maki, when he's not playing Pro Warrior or theorizing, he's playing a Boomkin.
Yeah.
Because I know. I saw him.
Yeah, I like him more when he plays Guardian.
Guardian too. Resto too, actually. He plays a lot of Druid.
No, it's
Traitor.
Moi has been the person who's been helping us with understanding Pro Warrior for our guides for a year and a half, 2 years now.
We have some history, yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. We also played together, but again, when he played Boomkin.
You have something with Boomkin, man.
Yes, Mark. Yes, but that's a different topic. That's a different topic. Okay, well, we'll not get into that. Okay, all right, boys. So thank you for the info, the quick biographies for WoW. Now we usually started off like this. Basically, the good old question for the community that is interested more or less in Protection Warrior: which iteration of PROT Warrior do you guys think was the best, and which expansion? And we can start it off with whoever wants to. It's all subjective here, so go ahead.
Since I can't remember a lot of iterations anymore. I've been playing the game since TBC, but I just don't remember a lot since I was very casual prior to BFA. So I would have to say BFA was my favorite one, because when it comes to tanking, I really loved just dishing out a tons of damage while just being a raid boss. That's generally the theme I'm going for. So BFA was clearly my favorite, because you were just great. Topping damage meters, even in 8.0 when everybody was saying, it's not good, when it really was. So yeah, and it's just the design philosophy in 8.0 was just great. That the feedback loop from the rage gain and spending it constantly was just amazing. Right. That has to be my favorite one.
So not talking corruptions, right?
Yeah.
It was good.
Season 4 was a different. That I did not like how the gearing process of Season 4 worked at all. And how people then just started infinitely stacking versatility. I never did that.
Yeah, that was like a permanent shield wall or something at one point for some of the tanks.
Your baseline, like I had a full versatile set, and I ran one key with it and was like, yep, nope, I'm not doing this, I'm out, peace. Like I want to take damage, like you took 0 damage. 60% baseline verse, and then you jumped up to 100%, 110% with procs. I'm like, yeah, okay, I might as well just log off. That was my take on it.
It was a crazy patch that we do not want to remember. All right, well, what about you, Pika? What's the favorite version of Pro Warrior that you've played so far?
So I've actually been recently playing a lot of TBC as Pro Warrior, and what it helped me realize is like, you know, how far Pro Warrior has come between something like TBC and the current state of Pro Warrior. You know, in TBC, you're very, very strong. You're tanky. However, you have a ton of threat issues, right? Things like having 4 target cap with thunderclap, or you know, having to, you know, wait, please wait for 3 thunders, please, I'm just trying to get aggro. You know, it's like such a hard thing, but it really helped me appreciate, you know, how far Pro Warrior has come since then. Along the lines of what my favorite iteration is, I would say yes, also BFA Pro Warrior, but I actually did appreciate Corruption a lot. And I appreciate it for a couple of reasons, right? One, depending on the content I was doing, I could go like, oh, like, you know what? I just want to smash, right? So I'm just gonna put out a ton of Twilight Devastation. Doesn't matter if things from beyond are coming to kill me. I just spell reflect them anyways, right? So I could focus on big damage, as well as also try to master your spell reflect, right? Because that's one of the expansions where spell reflect played such a huge difference. It's where all the other tanks were like, please nerf spell reflect, you know, please, because it was just so good, right? There's the major difference between, you know, timing some of the hardest keys and not. And then also like the versatility stacking you guys were talking about. Yes, Nambra's right. It made us pretty much an impervious tank. You know, we could AFK sometimes and you'd be completely fine, right? But as a Mythic Plus tank, what it allowed me to do, it gave me a break to really focus on something like shot calling, right? Because shot calling is something that's imperative to high Mythic Plus. And if you're worried about dying every single second, like at the start of 9.0, you don't have time to, you know, I need to worry about your kick. I need to worry about your stun. So it really gave me like the time and experience to develop shot calling as part of my, you know, repertoire as a tank. But basically it made us like, I'll be able to focus on the whole scenario, not just, you know, am I going to die? Am I not going to die?
Pretty cool.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think it's the first tank we ever talked to who's actually mentioning shot calling. I think that's really important.
Yeah,
lead,
I mean,
lead, motherfucker, lead.
I mean, arguably, at least from our perspective and from how we play, tanks usually are at the helm when it comes to Mythic Plus. You obviously are in charge of the routes, and usually when playing with Pugs, I personally feel like I'm adjusting my pools based on how the people are playing around me, like how much damage we have, how well the healer is able to keep me up and things like that. So I do feel like shot calling. I see myself doing that if I were doing like 20 plus keys, I guess.
Yeah, I know you're shot calling, man. Kick! Oh my god!
And I'm not saying it was good shot calling, man. I said I was gonna do it.
Best shot calling is when you announce, okay, I'm gonna reflect this, and then somebody kicks it anyway.
Oh yeah, I know that. I know that.
Guilty. I'm sorry. I did that a lot. I'm sorry.
That's my favorite. I'm like, yeah, thank you.
Well, let's not call it shot calling. Let's call it what it is. It's babysitting the DPSers to remember them that they have interrupts and everything.
Absolutely.
Of course. I'll take it.
Well, if in a world where all of the DPS specs will get something like what Demon Hunter has, where you get resource by kicking, everybody would eventually end up kicking. I suppose.
Yeah. You kick trees and stuff to get the that.
Doesn't matter, man. Need that focus.
Cool.
No, they'll still be screaming, I'm in my combustion. Sorry, I can't.
That's actually one of the moments where my fire mage that I was playing pre-made with used his kick the most, because he was so on high APM mode. It was like, yeah, okay, instant kick. I was like, I didn't even call yet, but sure, great, thank you. That was one of the good things.
No, the mages I run with, they try to kick right before the combustion, even if they kick nothing, right? Like, I missed my kick. I guess I can't kick during combustion.
He used it actually rotationally to get a proc back. Something like that. I think there was something like that
Wasn't that an 8.3?
BFA, I believe.
Yeah, I think a memory of Lucid Dreams. Yeah.
Oh, true.
Where it was rotational to just use your kick.
Yeah, well, there you go. Marky, what about you, man? What PROT Warrior iteration do you love the most or think it was the best?
Well, as a disclaimer, I have to say that I played vanilla TBC, and then I took a long break until Legion.
All right.
And so these are the expansions that I have to choose between. First of all, everybody talking about PFA. I also enjoyed PFA. It was fun, but instead of all this versatility and whatever else corruptions, I was stacking Leech because why not? When would I get 30 or 40% Leech otherwise, right? Just stack it with corruptions. But as far as it comes to my favorite iteration, I would probably have to say that Legion with tier 20 and tier 21 sets. That was crazy.
I think wasn't like super high APM by 7.3, I think, the Pro Warrior. Because I remember when they added the GCD thing, I think in pre-patch CBFA, and I felt like everything died down. Like I was pushing like twice 50% less buttons on Pro Warrior. I don't know what that happened. Must have been pre-patch.
I think somewhere there, yeah. Because the tier 20 and tier 21 was where we had the 2 4-piece tier 20 and 2-piece tier 21, right? It provided us with Berserker Rage, generated 20 rage and additional rage every, I can't remember, like 1 second for its duration. And then the 4-piece was the Chill Slam, reduces the cooldown of Berserker Rage by 3 seconds. So that's a nice rage loop. And then what the tier 21 2-set did was that while Battlecry was active, it reduced the cooldown of Shield Slam by 100%. So running this together with anger management, you could pretty much just permanently spam Shield Slam and get a ton of rage. So we just fed into this nice, fast gameplay loop.
Yeah, everybody lives
Same
nice
rage generation coupled with the damage and then the rage feedback loop happening again. Yeah.
Wait, are we talking about BFA? Because that's basically the same thing.
Well, yeah, you did that as well, yeah. Especially with Lucid Dreams, right? But there it was mainly a lot of... It was like just slamming one button of Shield Slam.
Okay, so let me ask you guys. This is coming from the perspective of an outsider, but what actually happened moving to Shadowlands? Was, like, I don't know, Vengeance too powerful? Or was PROT Warrior lacking some stuff? Because I remember we did a couple of logs and then we put in the tier list for tanks and stuff. And I rember, like, at least at the beginning, PROT Warrior was not looking that great.
The thing is,
it was always Vengeance.
I think it was all the tanks that got there's a coefficient that got nerfed, if I recall, right? The armor of all tanks kind of was busted.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about like why PROT Warrior kind of fell off at the start of 9.0. Mm-hmm. I kind of mentioned this on my stream because that's one of the biggest questions I kind of got when I started streaming in 9.0. And one of the biggest reasons I would say personally, it wasn't that Warrior lost like a crazy amount of strength. Like, yes, our talents got reworked and anger management, we didn't have as much uptime of Avatar. Things were a little bit clunky with our talents and it did change. But I think the biggest change, the problem with it was that so many Warriors came from end of season 4 with full versatility PROT Warrior, right? Like the indestructible PROT Warrior with the highest amount of gear, the crazy amount of damage, and then you go into a whole new expansion. So when you go into a whole new expansion, your everything gets reset, right? So even at the start of BFA, Warriors weren't like as strong as they were because we do scale very, very well with haste. But basically at the start of Shadowlands, Warriors came in like maybe these are reroll meta PROT Warriors who like joined in at the end of season 4, seeing us at our strongest, and then they come into a new expansion and they don't really know how to handle not being like, you know, crazy strong, right? Not having the infinite amount of versatility. We're actually dying to things like magic bolts, actually dying to people not kicking. And that's the biggest problem at the start of Shadowlands. It was the huge difference between being at our best and being at our worst. And people couldn't handle that. So, you know, they weren't used to having to kite. And, you know, that's why people saw PROT Warrior as so weak when we actually weren't that bad after all. And personally, that's my experience. How about you, Nam?
For me, I agree basically with everything except the part where you said like we're at our worst, because I feel like we're not, or we weren't. It's literally just like you said, people were used to being this god of a tank, basically, in terms of BFA levels at least. And then we got this talent shuffle, the rotation changed up slightly a bit. And just, the lack of gear is mainly that thing. People aren't used to Prot Worry being like low gear and everything. That's really punishing. You really need a base level of gear to function well. And not many people are actually willing to put in the hours to gear up your fresh Prot Warrior and get to know it and understand the rotation, everything, what has changed. So it's just not a lot of love from like those Phantom rerollers, obviously. So they just... My main thing would be people just didn't know how to play it and they weren't willing to put in the hours when everybody was just like, oh, look, everybody on beta played Vengeance Demon Hunter until 22, so I'm gonna do the same. And then that's that. It's just polarizing and just snowballed.
I'm never saying that like Vengeance isn't strong. Like Vengeance is very strong and their toolkit fits perfectly with the style of dungeons in the current expansion. But yeah, like people didn't really understand like where does Prot Warrior, like where are your strengths and where are your weaknesses? And our strengths always being, taking that physical damage. Whenever our shield block is up, our physical damage reduction is crazily insane. But we are weak to magic damage. Like if you look at the highest keys in BFA, where were Prot Warriors struggling? We're struggling at Zul, right? At like a very high King's Rest. And why is that? It's because it's pure magic damage, right? Why did we kind of struggle in season 3 of BFA? We didn't like fall off completely, but the magic damage from those emissaries were killer on Prot Warrior, which is why like other tanks started to like move out. Like Monk was also very strong in season 3 when Prot Warrior was very strong in season 2 and season 4, because the affixes kind of revolved around physical damage. And like people needed to understand that going into Shadowlands.
One of the things though in season 3 with Monk was though, like they had the stars aligned for them. They had insane trinkets that scaled off of their, what was it, crit? Where they got an extra heal for the Urchin and the Edict, as well as Ring of Peace, just completely negating the seasonal affix every now and again, where you're just like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna use Ring, and then that thing is gone.
Wasn't Celestial Guidance also bugged? Wasn't that why Brewmaster was the strongest goddamn phone?
Absolutely.
Because I remember they were fixing it. I think it was proccing way too much, or was proccing weirdly based off some HP coefficient. I don't remember the exact details.
Yeah, exactly. If they basically got 50% too much healing out of their Celestial Fortune or whatever it's called.
Oh, Fortune, right. I think that's
yeah. So that was also one of the reasons, as well as the Hot Trap coming in, so they got a good damage buff, as well as the first boss's weapon, which also increased their DPS output, which they were lacking, and then they got like compensation through gear. But yeah, I guess that's enough about that.
But what about the representation in the race? We touched a lot on the Mythic Plus side of things. It's obvious because Pika is a Mythic Plus god over there. But what about rating? Because again, talking about logs. Okay, it's not the most trustworthy source, I know, but maybe just addressing community perception in raids, at least not from the beginning. Was this the same issues, like just people not really understanding how to play properly, or actually having some weaknesses for this raid tier specifically?
It's mostly a popularity issue.
Right.
Even in BFA, when everybody was screaming Prot Warriors OP, Prot Warriors is insanely strong. But if you look at the numbers from the raids and the stories that I've heard in Skyhold, you were not a really popular tank for the raid. Like everybody was saying, yeah, there's so much magic damage. You can't tank the raid as a Prot Warrior. What do you mean? And stuff like that. Those stories went around a ton. And that, I guess, has weighed into Castle Nathri as well, where people just think Prot Warrior is not a good raid tank because of the potential of magic damage and oh no, our biggest weakness. And that just trickles down, obviously, and then it's just, in general, Prot Warrior is not a popular spec. Even right now, when it was even used in the world Race to World First, for multiple reasons, most of the tanks are just Vengeance Demon Hunter and Brewmaster. Like by a long shot.
Well, we're here to change that community perception.
I actually have a different take on that. And my take on that is, when you look to the world first guilds, right? Like what tank comp are they running? And people like tend to typically copy, what is Limit doing? What is Echo doing? What is BDG doing, right? And if you see a Prot Warrior there, then like Prot Warrior maybe gains a little bit more of popularity in the raids. But the main issue comes like down to it is kind of like the reason I know I have a raid spot, right? Why do I have a raid spot? Well, I bring Battle Shout and I bring Rallying Cry. Okay, if I didn't have Battle Shout, honestly, I don't know if Warriors would have even seen play this tier, right? And the reason why people ran Prot Warriors this tier is they wanted the Rally and they wanted the Battle Shout, but usually you get that from DPS Warriors, right? But DPS Warriors this tier specifically were pretty lackluster, right? At the start, before Fury got the buffs, right?
Absolutely.
We're talking about like during prog, right? So if you look at like something like SLG, I'll be getting like a 99 parse, right? And I'm still like bottom of the damage meter, right? And for DPS Warriors. And whenever DPS Warriors are like bad, then Prot Warriors seem to tend to have a rise, right? Because you still want that shout, you still want that rally, but you don't want to have to bring the bottom of the DPS. So that's why Prot Warriors are pretty strong right now, I would say, in Shadowlands, because DPS Warriors are a little bit lackluster. Same thing with Havoc, right? Like, why do Vengeance Hunters suddenly see such a surge in Castle Nathria versus before? Because Havoc was awful. Like, that's just as it is. Like, Havoc Demon Hunter damage output was pretty awful at the start of the tier. So run it back like all the other expansions, and DPS Warriors were always doing very, very well. Right, so you didn't need their buff. Like you already had naturally their buff in the raid. You didn't have to find a way to fit it in without bringing lackluster DPS. And the other reason is that early prog, if you look at the tank compositions that people are using for raids, you're talking about things like Brewmaster Monk, which is very good because of stagger, right? It takes the big hits and puts it over a little bit longer period of time, so healers have time to react, and they're pretty self-sufficient, you know. With their orbs. And then secondly, you have Blood Decay. Again, Death Strike. They don't need to be managed by healer as much as something like a Prot Warrior, which, you know, we're completely reliant on our healers in order to keep us up. No matter what we're doing, we're taking less damage here and there, but we have no self-sufficiency, like outside of like hoping Ignore Pain and using our cooldowns well, but we still have to rely on healing. So that healing, instead of going onto the raid during progression, during big AoEs, has to be then focused more on your tank, which is why it's not I wouldn't say it's like a tier 1, you know, progression tank. I would say that it brings the rally and it brings the battle shout if you don't have a DPS warrior. But typically Blood Decay, Brewmaster, Vengeance Demon Hunter are all kind of a little bit more suited to progression when healing is a little bit scarce.
Although we do run into this issue with pretty much every spec when it comes to raid buffs, and that causes a problem when it comes to representation, let's say. I do want to ask a more specific question based on what you just mentioned, Pika, because I was personally very happy to see the changes to Indomitable that we have right now in Shadowlands as opposed to what it has been, I guess, for the past 3 expansions, if you consider Shadowlands as well. In BFA and in Legion, it was not as sustainable. I think it was used in Legion. Maybe you guys can correct me on this one, at least at the beginning. But I know that Indomitable was pretty lackluster in BFA, and it felt like now it was addressing the lack of self-sustain that PROT had. Obviously, will never be something like PROT Paladin or Blood Decay, but I personally felt that was a step in the right direction. How much did you guys feel like this impacted your overall survivability, let's say, the changes to Indomitable?
It was a nice addition, like absolutely. Like in the early stages of the beta, it would compete with, was it Bolster? I think it competed with Bolster.
Yeah,
like in the early beta.
In the early beta, the talents were messed up, so it was Bolster, Indom, and Never Surrender all in the same row.
Yeah, and so the feedback was we kind of want to play Indomitable because we missed the legendary bracers from Legion, because that's basically half of the effect it was. Like it used to be just a 10% HP increase, but now every 10 rage you spend, you heal yourself for 1% of your maximum HP. That was the Manner of Bracers from Legion, and it's just a really nice addition to the kit. Actually making it a good talent now, which is basically picked in every single situation. And so I'm very happy to see that one coming into play.
I mean, it's picked in every single situation because Never Surrender and Impending Victory are just so lackluster. So you almost never want to pick those talents.
Absolutely.
But me personally, as Noma said, it's really nice to have, but it's nothing game-changing, I would say, because you're still not going to be this amazing self-sufficient tank. You're still going to get your HOTS and direct heals depending on the scenario. So it's just like something in addition.
So we kind of addressed, how things started off in Shadowlands. Now, 9.1 looks promising, I would say. Is that too much?
Well, I mean, Pro Warrior got a couple of buffs in 9.0. I don't remember exactly. I know, was Vanguard buffed again? I feel like they're nerfing Vanguard and buffing Vanguard every expansion now.
Ping-ponging with
I don't know. It seems like, and this is a personal problem that I have with the overall stat of haste and how haste reliant is Pro Warrior and how it can change from having like 5% haste to having like 20% haste. The playstyle and survivability of PROT can change, at least from an average player's perspective, changes a lot. And I feel like whenever you swap from a new expansion, you drop in that haste. It's always a little bit of a rocky start, but I think PROT Warrior picks up a lot of speed with a lot of gear, and obviously with a lot of haste. But even when I picked PROT Warrior initially, it didn't feel like it was that bad of a tank, at least the way the community perception was supposed to be. With that in mind, how do you guys see the spec coming into 9.1 and the new raid, whatever you managed to test so far? Because I think by the time of this recording, the raid isn't out yet.
I think PROT Warrior and every single tank generally is in a really good spot going into 9.1. One of the best things in the raid is that the first boss drops a shield, our most important item. First boss right off the bat drops a haste versatility shield, which everybody loves. Hey, haste versa, that's all I want, right? So that's great if you can snag that one real quick. So with the changes that happened in 9.05 with the reprisal coming into play and the many Vanguard buffs in beta, PROT Warrior is looking in a really good position, I feel like, in the right hands.
I did some PTR testing, but my guild did like extensive PTR testing, and so did many other guilds, right, coming into the new raid. But what the feedback that most people gave, not counting like the most recent changes that haven't really been able to test, right? But in the PTR testing, tank damage was pretty much irrelevant. Like none of the bosses were hitting so hard that you needed to have a big self-healing tank. You needed to have like a monk in order to take the damage. No tank damage was really doing that much in the new raid, even in mythic testing. Obviously, again, like that might change when it actually goes live. But because of that, PROT Warrior is looking like a pretty good tank going forward. One of the big changes in 9.0.5 was the introduction of Reprisal Legendary, right? And that what allowed us to do with the combination of repercussions was to have like talent is to have about 100% uptime of shield block, right? Which is pretty unheard of, like during this time of tanking, having 100% of your strongest physical reduction mitigation. And because of that, PROT Warrior actually looks like a pretty damn strong tank going into 9.1 for any like heavy melee damage tank. Because I don't like something like if there's a boss that's exactly kind of like the damage profile of Sludge Fist, then yeah, there's going to be no tank that, in my personal opinion, that's going to be as strong as PROT Warrior, because you have 100% uptime of shield block, and if that boss doesn't do crazy magic damage, then they're going to be probably the number one tank for that.
And even if he's gonna do crazy magic damage, then we're still going to have options to deal with it. At least if it's going to be spike damage, then we can still run like the wall or swap around some of our talents to anger management. So I also agree that we are really looking strong in 9.1. Like there weren't many changes. There was only like this execute damage increase 10% that they buffed us with, but that's a whole other story when it comes to our damage output. But defensively, we are 100% in a really, really solid spot.
And I guess that can translate also to Mythic Plus. I mean, is it like the same story? PROT Warrior is going to be much better, or at least better?
Okay, let's. I have to say this: we are already really good. All this perception of PROT is so bad is just lingering around. Like,
I didn't say that, man.
Yeah, but even in the current patch, we're really strong. Like ever since Reprisal came out, even before that. Before Reprisal we were okay, but since Reprisal we are in a really solid spot in regards to Mythic Plus.
So nobody's complaining then.
Yeah. Before Reprisal, I was the only PROT Warrior pushing. Reprisal,
I remember
everyone's jumping on this.
Yeah.
I remember the logs. You weren't even playing Vent here, right?
Well, like a warrior has we're kind of blessed and cursed at the same time that I personally don't think our covenants matter that much. Like, yeah, like, they give you some kind of like cool abilities here and there, but what it breaks down to is normally you have one spell, whether it be like Soul Shape, Door Shadows, as a kiting ability, right? Something to help you, whether like Spear Bastion, and then you have something that kind of does damage or interrupts, right? So again, like Spear Bastion or Ancient Aftershock. So like there are things that are old, like it's nice to have, but if your DPS just kind of kick or help you at all, it's kind of like the same thing, right? Spear Bastion is just like a cool vortex, right? Ancient Aftershock is just your DPS don't have to kick for 12 seconds when they really could just kick, and you don't really need Ancient Aftershock, right? So like your covenants don't matter that much for Prot Warriors, so you can push as, I've pushed as all 4 covenants at one point or another because I wanted to test it. I wanted to go to Nom being like, oh, hey, look, Nom, I'm doing as Necrolord. Explain to everybody why I'm Necrolord. Hey, Nom, I'm playing Venthyr now. Please explain to everybody who comes into Skyhold saying, wait, is Venthyr best? So
that was
Yep, exactly.
that was you, man. Where I was getting constant questions on stream. So Necrolord now. So Night Fae now. I was like, what?
Every single day.
I was in the Kyrian camp. I love Spear Bastion.
Yeah, but like because of that, like I don't think Covenant matters like too much. Obviously, if you want to go to like maybe that 25 to 26 key, maybe it'll make that little bit of difference, right? That you need in order to time that key. But in generally, like 99% of the population, you can play literally any Covenant, and as long as you do good, solid Prot Warrior play, you'll be completely fine. And then that being said, like what changed in 9.1 that is so different that why Prot Warrior is looking pretty good? 2 of the most significant changes I would say is, one is the removal of Prideful, right? So Prideful does like a ton of magic damage, right? On your tank, and if you don't have shield block up, it also does a part of physical damage. So Prideful is also not a very good thing for Prot Warriors because we actually aren't self-sufficient at all. So we're completely reliant on our healer in order to heal us. Whereas something like a Vengeance Demon Hunter or Blood Decay, during Prideful, they could just sit there the entire time and probably never die. Like your rest of your team will die, but the tank on its own is pretty self-sufficient, which gives your healer a lot more options to either aid DPS to kill the Prideful faster or to heal other people so you don't die. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2 is the removal of everyone's favorite belt enchant, right? It's slipping my mind right now.
Cardboard Assassin.
Cardboard Assassin. So they nerfed Cardboard Assassin in the recent patch to make it so that it really only takes like 1 hit now, and it shares a cooldown with potions. Why that was such a big thing is that, I don't know if you can see some of the clips in 9.0, 9.0.5. There's something like 30 seconds where tanks aren't tanking, and that's perfectly built for something like a Vengeance Demon Hunter, right? Whenever they hit Twilight Dev, they're completely fine. Once meta drops, all right, you drop Cardboard Assassin. Okay, player 2 drop Cardboard Assassin. Player 3 drop Cardboard Assassin for like a good 30 seconds straight, and then you rinse and repeat. Oh, they have Twilight Dev again. Okay, we can start tanking these giant packs. And because they removed that, or they removed really the ability to do that in 9.0, the tanks really have to now tank the packs. You no more have that borrowed power from other classes, especially also with Boomkin falling a little bit out of the meta. Like obviously Boomkin is still going to be, I think, pretty decent for Mythic Plus, but maybe they won't be the S tier that everyone is looking for because their damage profile is like a little bit worse now. That's also then again with the removal of trees. So because you don't have things like trees and Cardboard Assassin to tank all the physical hits for you, tanks that can take great physical abuse, so like Bears, Prot Warrior, are looking to be pretty good in 9.1.
Yeah, and the meta changing potentially to different DPS, not entirely just range balance based, also makes it that the value of, the Demon Hunter debuff slightly decreases, potentially. So the value of Battle Shout might rise. I don't know.
Chaos Brand.
And with the Rallying Cry, we also offer a good group CD for survival for hierarchies, because in the hierarchies, it's usually an issue of the DPS surviving rather than the tank through like bosses or missed stuff. Yeah? But as Pika mentioned, the 30 seconds time where you had, trees, then 5 Cardboard Assassins, then throw an Earth Ally in there. By the time all of that has happened, maybe trees is up again. So you really didn't have to tank. And everything just stood still in place. So the Fire Mage's Flame Patches could just continuously tick and do crazy damage. And since that is just kind of changing, especially also with the Fire Mage's nerfs, that would shake up the meta a bit. for
Yeah,
the
but
tank
don't
choice.
get me wrong though. Like all the other tanks, they're still going to be pretty good, right? Not like if Sigil and all the Demon Hunter utility was good in season 1, it's still very good in season 2. Like there's nothing that's better than Silent Sigil, I think, for utility. Like Silent Sigil on Demon Hunter is absolutely broken. Like I mean, Demon Hunter's gonna hate me out there. Like I firmly think that yes, it should be a great AoE interrupt, but I think the silence is just too powerful for it to last the length that it does. Right? So you look at something like Mechagon, right? Right before the two gnomes that you have to fight in the gnome wing. There's those 3 acid little guys, 3 slimes, and something with Silent Sigil into beam into like natural interrupts. Like you have enough time to kill it. But if you're not a tank that has something like that, your whole team is just gonna get obliterated in a high key. And something like Ring of Peace, like all these other tanks have very high utility that I think PROT Warrior lacks a little bit. We kind of rely a lot on our utility on, again, the team doing well, which is why I kind of go back to shot calling is one of the most important things you can do in Mythic Plus, because everyone has the ability to do these things, but the other tanks don't have to rely on other people to do it for you. But you don't need to rely on having to be like, oh, can you sheep that? You can just incap it, you can imprison it. And again, like so on and so forth.
Oh, but now we can come back to the covenants, because covenants in this area do matter because we have Night Fae, right? We used to be pretty much all Kyrian before, probably mainly due to the fact that nobody else just played Kyrian and we wanted the dungeon bonus buffs. But now with the changes and everything done in 9.1, I think that some of the DPS classes are also going Kyrian. We are a bit more lenient in that we can choose to go Night Fae without losing the Kyrian benefits from another party member. So we do have this nice solid 12-second interrupts that we can play around.
Yep. What I want to touch upon again was warrior utility, because when I play other tanks, one thing I miss the most is my stuns, especially on Vengeance Demon Hunter. Since I'm so used to PROT Warrior, and then if I were to play my Demon Hunter, just the lack of instant stuns is just what throws me off a lot. Like, yeah, Silent Sigil is amazing, especially when you mentioned it, I thought of Sanguine Depths after first boss, this pull where you pull like 15 casters or whatever at once and use Silent Sigil, and you're like, oh, okay, they just die now. When Warrior, I think you can deal with that separately yourself as well, because I treat my fear more than an AoE interrupt, because they instantly break anyway. So you have your shockwave, you have your fear, and as well if you talent into Stormbolt, you have what I think is actually, I would personally think that Stormbolt is actually a bit overpowered, because not many tanks can offer a ranged stun on a 30-second cooldown. That's a 4-second stun. Now if you play with rogues, then obviously shockwave is not a desired thing because it puts everything on a DR. So the stuns from the rogue will just not last as long, so that's not as great. But that in itself, coupled with the Railing Cry, I think makes up a great point of utility for Warrior.
All the utility that I need is Spell Reflect. Whenever I play another tank, then that's like the one thing I miss the most. Like just shockwaving the flying, what are the birdies, Inspires of Ascension, and then just Spell Reflecting all of them, watching them die. Or the last boss in the other side. Like I tanked that on my Paladin, and I almost had a heart attack because I nearly died. Well, on Protection Warrior, just press Spell Reflect and laugh at his face.
I think for any other tank than PROT Warrior, that ability is the most aptly named ability in the game, the Soul Crusher ability. That whenever that pops and I'm not a PROT Warrior, I 100% goes, oh fuck, I should have been a PROT Warrior right now.
Alright, have I introduced you to the Temple of Vengeance Demon Hunter? You hit Twilight Dev and nothing hurts you. It's a very good way of spell reflecting.
That is true. Now with Darkler Boon or whatever, might have even more. But enough about Vengeance. I actually wanted to play off on a couple of things that you guys said, especially against utility. I don't know how this can translate into it as well, but we do have a couple of talents that we kind of almost never use, although PROT Warrior has a fair bit of viable talents depending on which legendary you use. But right now, the first one that comes to mind is Menace. And I don't recall ever using Menace or ever having a reason to use Menace. And when you mentioned the Silent Sigil, I was like, oh yeah, that's some pretty good utility. Maybe Pro Warrior can get something similar to that in the form of Menace, because Menace, the way it is right now, it feels a little bit laxer. So what I'm getting at is, in terms of talents, guys, like the dead talents or talents that never are used, what do you guys think of? Can we get rid of some? Do you think that they can be improved upon, and in what way you see them being added so that maybe PROT Warrior can find an easier time to be seen as a valid spot in a group, Mythic Plus or Raid as well? Because obviously there's always the issue of buffs, of class buffs, and a lot of people seem to think that it's probably better if we just get rid of them altogether, but then you still have utility, and there has to be some difference between having a Pro Warrior and a Blood DK that brings AMZ, right? So what do you guys think about the talents? Do you think like some of them can be improved, or some of them are just dead forever? Anything?
I'm going to shoot from the hip. Punish, Dragon Roar, Never Surrender, Unstoppable Force. There you go.
Note it down.
All right.
Take it home with you.
Easier builds.
Nice. I
You
mean,
used it once.
I used it once, but in general, like
he got me to run this really crazy build, right? Like he posted in Skyhood as like Pika should try it on stream, and then I came to my stream, and then everyone was like, "Did you guys see the build Maui tried? Like, it's asking you to try. You should try it." I'm like, all right, I'll try it in this 15 DOS, and oh my god, it was like the worst experience in my life. I was like, oh god, Punish is awful for like AoE. I have to press now Devastate on top of like everything, and my threat is gone, and I'm playing things like Dragon's Roar or like I don't remember exactly, like Never Surrender. I just felt so weak. Like obviously there are some talents that are going to be there like all the time, right? You're gonna run Indomitable, like you have no choice. You're gonna run Devastator. Whenever you try to vary too much from that, like your build just gets like, or it seems to get like 10 times worse.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. Like all the talents that I mentioned before, I think that all of these should are pretty much dead right now, either because they are so lackluster or because of what they are competing against. Like Devastator, I mean, Punish is competing against Devastator. Dragon Roar is competing against Booming Voice, Best Served Cold. Like Dragon Roar did used to have some niche back in Alpha, I think, when it did uncapped AoE and a ton of damage, but they just made it also a drop-off AoE somewhere down the line, and now it's just far behind all the other options. Never Surrender has been dead pretty much since forever. I think we used it in BFA like on the Motherload 2 last bosses when you wanted to on really, really high keys, but that's about it. Unstoppable Force got killed because of the Thunderlords change and anger management change, yeah. And well, of course, Thunderclap damage reduction. So I think that like there are plenty of talents that we'll never see play. Like we have this almost set in stone talent build for Mythic Plus and for raids. Outside of some legendary choices influencing, like if you want to run Reprisal with heavy repercussion. But when we come to what could be done to change it, then for example, I don't know, let's take Never Surrender. Yeah, at the moment it's pretty useless. It just increases the maximum gap of your Ignore Pain, which literally does nothing. You're still going to die. It doesn't matter what your maximum gap is. Like they could maybe, I don't know, make it Legion Ignore Pain, where it actually increases the damage that it prevents from like to 90%, up to 90% or something like that. Then at least it would be beneficial more of the time, because at the moment it's just...
Yeah, if you change how it worked with it prevents now 90% of the damage taken, you could argue, it would turn Ignore Pain into a powerful defensive for like absorbing entire hits of like large hits or just generally damage dots. Because right now the 50% absorb is just like something, okay, sure, like from a 4k hit you still take 2k, and if you turn that to 90, it'll turn to like a 400 hit. Sure, you won't over the entire duration of Ignore Pain you will absorb the exact same amount of damage, but with the threshold prevention change, it could actually be used against like large hits like way better. You could just negate it. It would basically turn into an Azov's Psychic Shell. That's what it was. And then would it actually have uses outside of just... no, it doesn't have any uses right now. So yeah.
like the main problem with our talent rows is that there's you either run to the situation where a talent is kind of useless, and it's because there's like somewhat of like a negative kind of effect. Let's take Menace for example, right? You guys were talking about that. In theory, Menace is pretty good for one major situation, which I would think is Sanguine, right? Like you want to get mobs out, you need a knockback. Sanguine was like the only theorized time you would maybe run Menace. But the problem with that is that it keeps your main target in the Sanguine. So if you want to be really crafty, you have to kind of choose another target that's beside the target you want to knock out a Sanguine to then knock it out using Menace, which is a really annoying kind of not really feasible kind of thing at the time. And also like so many mobs aren't affected by knockback that you really do want to get knocked back. So the talent is kind of dead. And then the other option is that there's just a clear better talent in the row versus that talent. Like for instance, like you want to run something like Dragon's Roar, right? Like just for the damage, but Best Served Cold and Booming Voice are just so much better. And because Dragon's Roar also has the AoE cap, it's just not as good. The one talent I wish like I could have is I wish I could have Stormbolt no matter what, because as Nam was saying before, I think Stormbolt is crazy good. It is probably one of the best utilities you can have. But if you're running with the new legendary Reprisal, it's kind of hard to also want to run Stormbolt. Yeah, I'm a firm believer that yes, I would want to have Stormbolt, but sometimes double time does make that difference, especially in survivability of high keys. You just hope that your DPS will end up stunning and will stop the things so that they don't kill you, so that you can in turn have more shield block uptime, so you can keep things in place so they can do more damage. And that's kind of like the trade-offs you keep happening. And I wish we could have Stormbolt baseline instead of having to choose double time over it, kind of thing. Either one or the other, but like I wish I didn't have to choose between something like that.
Anger management baseline.
I feel like it sounds like anger management as well is to become a staple for all warrior specs. I'm not sure exactly what Fury and Arms will be running in 9.1. But pretty much all warrior specs in the last couple of years have used anger management at any point in time, and I feel like those kind of mechanics make the class play smoother when you just get your stuff quicker. Because in the grand scheme of things, it's about us having fun playing the game, and how is not fun to have like your cool abilities quicker. And for me, from where I'm standing, just looking at the way that they're designed talents, it just feels like they just don't have the time to do everything. Like I've never seen a situation where I would like to use Punish, neither Menace as well. And like Moaki said, the Dragon Roar just doesn't make any sense. And it's weird in a world where you have like uncapped AoE, DPSs that you just have like what did you call it? Drop down damage, where it just scales down the more targets you have. I think that's what you meant, right? With Dragon Roar, right? And I think that's true for Thunderclap as well, if I'm not mistaken. Like the more targets you hit, the lower the damage that it does to the additional targets.
Yeah, but Thunderclap and the Revenge are past 5 targets, but Dragon Roar is past the first targets.
Right, so it just feels like it's out of place, and just feels like they didn't have the time to design it. So I don't know, it's a little bit weird. But keeping it to like the 9.1 topic, and I like the fact that you mentioned that the covenants aren't that important. Are the covenants legendaries making any change to that as well?
Because we talk Reprisal?
Yeah, because we did talk a lot about Reprisal, and obviously the wall is also pretty good. But are the covenant legendaries doing anything for PROT at the moment?
In the sense
they just can't replace Reprisal. At least in Mythic Plus, like Reprisal on its own is too strong of a legendary. It didn't matter like almost how you would tune any of the new legendaries coming out, and it doesn't matter how they would tune. If you made them like super strong, super OP in damage, it's just not going to be better than Reprisal in 9.1 in the current state.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying also on Skyhold. Like once the Kyrian legendary wasn't public yet, it just didn't exist. People were asking, I hope the Kyrian legendary is good. And I was like, it would have to be insanely broken for us to give up Reprisal. And then like for them to bring out a legendary that would trump our Reprisal, it would mean it would have to scale out of control for Arms and Fury as well, since they share the same legendaries with us, right? So that can't happen. So you already know from the get-go, like, that's probably not going to be a really good legendary. Like the Kyrian legendary is a good one for Arms Kyrian or for PvP, where it increases the duration of spear and the damage it deals. that coupled with Mechanicus later on with this Cornerstone is going to be really strong for Mythic Plus in terms of damage, at least for the other specs, but you really just can't give up Reprisal defensively. Offensively speaking, for Necrolord, the Glory Legendary is really powerful. However, you give up a ton of defensive, like you give up a ton of survivability for the favor of buffing an additional person with the Necrolord banner, which can see play in the raid. It's not going to be a choice for Mythic Plus because you give up all your survivability, but for raid it has really solid potential. If you know you can survive the encounter, especially in high-rated guilds, it's going to see definitely play. Like almost guaranteed, if there's a Prot Warrior in the raid from the top guilds, he's most likely going to be Necrolord running the Glory Legendary and then just getting fed externals, or if there's need for that, but the Glory Legendary really can shine there a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's like the only circumstance. Like in Mythic Plus, yeah, Reprisal is a no-brainer. But in Raid, because the raid damage is crazy, because survivability is not like such a big deal, at least you could see in PTR, any of the warriors that will be in the high raid guilds going into 9.1 will be Necrolord and will most likely be going Glory, because in the end of the day, DPS kills bosses, right? The more DPS that you have, the faster they die. You don't have to worry about like as many mechanics. So the best guilds in the world have some of the best DPS in the world because the checks are just so crazy. If you looked at like Castle Nathra and like Sludge Fist, that like during the progression for Mythic, it was crazy. The DPS check was just insane. But if the Prot Warrior had a chance there to run Glory, you for sure, like you would not see another Legendary that they would be running just because it buffs like 3 of the DPS during their big cooldowns, during like a damage increase phase on a boss. That's just insane. They go up to something like 5 to 800 damage increase on those people during those like 10-second windows.
During the race, some of them even tried to solo tank Sludge just to meet the DPS check, which in the end they didn't. Like, I think the tanks just couldn't handle it, so they just said, okay. Echo swapped Revis from DPS to tank, so they would gain it, still keep the battle shot buff, and then bring in another DPS instead of Maris. That was one thing they did. But yeah, like damage increase phases, like Sludge, is the perfect situation for Necrolord banner. Talking about the Venthyr and Nightfey Legendary, Sinful Surge, which extends Last Stand for us by 3 seconds for every condemn we use. Not really useful, since the conduit Unnerving Focus, as well as the Talent Bolster, don't get extended by it. So you literally just have, okay, I talent into Bolster because I have to run the Sinful Surge Legendary. And then I extend Last Stand quite a decent amount, but my shield block I gained off of it is just gonna drop off. So the Legendary itself is extremely useless. It does barely anything. And the Nature's Fury Legendary for Nightfey, also you give up all your survivability for a bit of a damage gain. As Mari can show or has figured out, it is actually the highest simming Legendary right now, but it's just not worth it.
They pretty much just shot themselves in the legs by releasing Reprisal, so at least as far as Protection Legendaries goes.
Was about to say, I like the mechanics of Reprisal. I like the charging all over the place and getting shield block. I feel like in a concept that's fun.
But don't go booing Reprisal.
It's
I know.
The worst Legendary. Since day one, It was coming out, I was complaining. I was like, this is the worst thing they could possibly put in the game, because it basically makes my Intervene on CD. I have to play it I have to use it on CD without ever thinking of, is it going to be a good time to use it? Like, should I be worried about when I should use it? Can I save somebody from mechanic by using Intervene on them? It's just so awful, and because we never had to use Intervene in such a way before that, I made this huge meme weak aura on my screen with a giant Intervene button. So every time that you have to press it, it helps new players get used to intervene on cooldown, and it's such a degenerate gameplay form. You're not really worrying about anything else other than like, can I charge it here? Can I charge it here? You're like a ping pong ball. It's like awful.
Yeah, I remember you complaining in Skyho, like literally from day on, like, nah, I don't want to give up. I don't want to use my utility to gain survivability. It's not what I want to do. And even though you made that giant weak aura, the few times I've popped into your stream, I see a solid minute of this icon just sitting there. I was like, okay,
Well,
Sure.
this is perfect because this is it works really well for my question. In a world where reprisal makes Pro Warrior so good, I think obviously the answer is probably pretty obvious right about now, but I still want to hear it. What would you guys prefer? Having reprisal and making Pro Warrior really good at content, and whatever legendary they add into the game, it will never be as good as reprisal, or them either sacking reprisal or nerfing it into the ground so that there would be at least a few legendaries that are competitive? And would those legendaries be competitive with the pool that we have now, or is it just back to shield wall if they sack reprisal? Or the wall, not shield wall, Jesus.
Okay, go ahead.
We would probably go back to that. The thing about reprisal is it's basically the band-aid fix that should have happened to the class baseline, because what the most people complain about is rage generation. I struggle with rage generation, then I struggle with snap threat, and they struggle with shield block uptime. And then it just decided, okay, hey, we have this useless legendary that in 9.0, the 9.0 iteration was when you intervene a target and that target gets hit and you redirect that hit, you gain a full ignore pain charge, I think, on yourself. And some rage, I think. That was the previous iteration. So that obviously got reworked into exactly the band-aid fix that the class itself needed. We were lacking in uptime, rage, and damage output. And through the Best of Cold talent, it fixed the damage. Through the frequent charging and free shield block charge, we gain like 50 effective rage per charge, 20 from the legendary and 30 from the shield block charge. So you had that going, and then the snap threat came from the talent as well, where Best of Cold increases your damage by 50% once you have the revenge proc, which is gained from the reprisal charge as well. So you had your initial first revenge would hit 50% harder, so you would have a threat. And if they were to implement that in the class, then yes, we would highly likely go back to the wall, because it's very easy to use solid rage generation, and then get to use more shield walls.
So we would still have the same problems if they get rid of the reprisal, the snap threat, the rage generation, and I guess I don't know how much of a problem shield block uptime was, but it's obviously a clear boon as it is now with the legendary. So if they took that out, the problems would still be there. So in the grand scheme of, okay, let's actually not have these problems anymore, would you see a way when that could become baseline, or would it have to become a talent? And if it becomes a talent, would it be, again, like a talent that you will always pick no matter what happens on the road that it would be on? Or do we just need an overall damage gain? Because I feel like from where I'm sitting, from a noob's perspective, Pro Warrior had a lot of damage from BFA, and it consistently got nerfed because also there was the Azurite power that was boosting his damage. But we lost the Azurite power, but we didn't get the damage back, which I feel like it's the most obvious example is from the Thunderclap build, the Clap build, which was it Unstoppable Force again? Because Unstoppable Force was so strong since we had Deafening Crash, right? I think the name was the Azurite was. We lost that, but we didn't get Unstoppable Force buffed back, so it's kind of like a weird position right now. So how do you guys see Warrior moving away from reprisal, either in 10.0 or at any point in time where either legendary will not be usable
anymore? It probably will in the new expansion. I'm guessing the borrow power. We all know how that tends to go.
In like 5 years when they're gonna release 10.0, man.
I'll still be wearing this reprisal legendary, dude. It's exactly the same way.
It's that good,
just
man.
to feel something.
I'm going to maybe say a bit of a not popular opinion, but I think that they should remove all block enhancing talents and like legendaries and things, and just fix the base block uptime. Because whenever there's a block enhancing talent or legendary like reprisal, it's almost a mandatory pick regardless of what else you have, just because of how strong shield block is. And it just makes the other options kind of lackluster. Like the only reason we're running Anger Management right now is because, and not Bolster, is because we have Reprisal, right? When we don't run Reprisal, we would be going back on to Bolster probably just for the increased shield block uptime. So I think that they really have to dig deep into the base class and fix the shield block uptime, just like on a class level, not on a borrowed power level.
Yeah, that's because in BFA we had anger management, and you had bolster that also reduced anger management at that time, also reduced the cooldown on last stand. So basically you didn't really have any downtime on your shield block between being able to have last stand come back faster because of anger management to fill any of the gaps that you didn't have shield block, and having that bolster talent, like every time you use last stand it gives you shield block. So now that we were lacking that, that's what it really made us have to kite a lot at the start of 9.0. But as long as reprisal is a thing, like nothing is really going to change, no matter how deep into the expansion that we're going to get. It's only going to be happen like, oh, if we get a second legendary, what is our secondary legendary? Personally, I would rather they remove reprisal, and that's just because when a new new patch comes out, I want things to be different, right? It's why I miss tier sets. Every time a tier set came out, it changed your gameplay in some way or another. Your rotation would be changing. Emphasis on certain skills would be changed, because now suddenly, you're going to be using maybe shield slam a lot more, because now it gives you this buff from the tier buff. Same thing with legendaries. I don't want to be using the same legendary the entire expansion, because that's just boring. I want more fun things in my play in order to make it different every single season, so that I have a reason to play again, instead of having to mindlessly do the same thing, just like a little bit of different scenery.
Yeah, cycling back to what Maui touched upon with the talents was what I was going to say. There's the two ways to go about it. As Maui said, okay, you remove all block talents and have the base block uptime just be fine or work out in itself. What I want is more so, on the last talent row, we have 2 block talents, and then we have anger management. It's just a DPS talent and something that works with shield wall. So we give up anger management and lose damage and gain block. Why do we have to choose between block uptime and damage? Why can't this just be 3 different shield block talents? I don't know how they could implement a third one that wasn't just going to be okay, or shield block just baseline lasts longer. Yeah. So yeah, I would see that happening, and in case they remove reprisal and then we get the 2 legendary system, then we would just cycle back to the wall, as well as using probably the unbreakable will, where we get 2 charges of shield wall, and half of the effect also is granted to the party, which means that we could use shield wall as a group CD instead of just for our own personal use. That would be a neat interaction where we just be a shield wall throwing machine, because the 2 charge system means you can use one for yourself or just as the raid group, and then just still have 1 charge banked up in case you need it sometimes else. That would be great. It would be very interesting to see. But as Pika said, the tier sets that just change your way of playing, and as well as what I preferred mostly was the different looks. The class-specific transmogs coming with it was also one of the biggest things for me, which got really boring in BFA, where they just removed that part.
Totally agree.
So you don't think Shards of Domination are a good replacement for tier sets?
Yeah.
Such a subject. But you guys offered a lot of solutions to maybe clear or not so clear issues, and this kind of transitions to one of the usual questions we go through within our podcast, and it goes a little something like this. So in a perfect world where you would work at Blizzard for a huge amount of money, and Ian Hazzikostas would put you in charge of the PROT Warrior spec, and he would say, hey man, can you either invent an ability for PROT Warrior that would be awesome and would fix some shit, or could you bring back something from the past, like a talent or an ability or something? And if that would be the case, what would you do? What would you be?
I would just go with anger management baseline. It fits the warrior fantasy so well in all 3 specs, where you get stronger by continuously fighting. You don't wait for stuff, you don't wait for anything, you just the better you are at fighting, the better you get. Yeah, constantly. It's just this feedback loop. That fits the fantasy so well of the berserker itself, but generally the warrior. It fits so well, and we have been using it forever. That would be one of the things I would like to see. Obviously the pre-nerf version where it reduces more cooldowns besides just Avatar and Shield Wall. Since Avatar right now is in itself a very confusing button. It's like, okay, it just increases your damage by 20%. Okay, cool.
One thing I would like to see personally, I don't know if you guys have ever played like Monster Hunter games. Monster Hunter does something really cool. A lot of the Koreans kind of developed this strategy where being on lower health, you do more damage and your gameplay speeds up, like things like that. And it's almost like a little bit of art, right? So when I think of warriors, I think of like you're into the fray, right? Which is like the talent name, right? So as you're taking more damage, maybe your like haste speeds up, things like that. And it gives the warriors like a little bit of a strength as like maybe your health is decreasing, or like a little bit way to like kind of like fight back. You're getting like a little bit stronger. You're a little bit like into the fray, kind of what I mean. So like something in Monster Hunter they do really well, like the lower health damage that you like, a little bit less health than you have. Maybe you get hit by something. They have this a little bit in TBC also. Like, you know, after you get hit by a critical strike, maybe you'll do more damage, things like that. I like that thought process of it personally. It always made it seem like it's fun to take damage, right? There's like a little bit of balance of taking damage and doing damage, which I think is what the warrior fantasy is about, right? Like warriors, like when they come to my stream, they're always thinking like, I don't want to kite. Like, this is not what a warrior is supposed to do. We're supposed to just go in there, just like, you know, just like fight it out, like brawl it out. Like, they don't ever want to run away. And if you want something like that, you have to incentivize people to want to go in there and stay in there. Because right now, like in the tank meta, you'd rather just hit everything. And if you could hold aggro forever, you just want to run away, right? It's your job to stay alive. And right now, you don't feel like a warrior if you're like running away, thunderclapping, you see my little Volpera jump away, please don't kill me, please don't kill me. And that's basically what warrior feels like sometimes.
Yeah, so basically the vengeance mechanic from Mist of Pandaria, where if you took unmitigated damage or not through your main mitigation, you would deal progressively more damage.
Yeah, I remember that was a huge problem in PvP actually. I don't know if you played arenas, because I think the vengeance mechanic was for all tanks, not for warrior, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember a meta in 3v3s where you had 3 blood decays. Oh my god. And it got nerfed multiple times. But yeah, I mean, when Pika was talking about it, I kind of remembered, what was the character's name in League of Legends? Darius? The dude that as he would get low in damage.
Tryndamere?
No, not or Tryndamere. Yeah. There was one dude that when he got low damage, he would like fuck you up.
Yeah,
Tryndamere, when he was low HP, he would attack faster.
That's also in Dota, the Troll Warlord or whatever he's called.
It falls into the warrior fantasy for sure. I would definitely see it, and I would say it for all specs, to be honest, in one way or another. What about you, Mohi? Do you have something on your mind in terms of that?
Oh, I have a lot of things on my mind.
I bet you do.
But both of the ideas that were mentioned before were really, really great. And hopefully Blizzard will listen and put them in. I would also make anger management baseline. Even in a nerfed version, it has it would be great if it was baseline. Then, secondly, this is one thing that I really, really want is Gladiator Stance back. Because
I remember that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yes, so if they could bring that back some way, that would also be great. And third thing that really bothers me is our current mastery. Like, our current mastery is RNG. I don't want this crap as a mastery. I want something that's not RNG, that's actually doing something noticeable. Like in Legion, when we had PFA, when we had this triple bomb setup, our mastery was actually good because we had just so much mastery out of Bastion of Might. But now with like low mastery levels, it's just so lackluster and RNG. Like I would rework mastery to be something more beneficial. But I can't give you more details right now because I haven't thought so thoroughly
let
about
Ian has a closest worry about balancing and tuning, man. You just bring the idea.
It's fine, as long as they don't make it like PROT Paladin, that's fine.
Yeah, a little bit more emphasis on our shouts, because right now, like Torghast, like you have abilities that are built around your shouts, right? Like if you shout, they take more damage. If you shout, it lasts 2 times as long. But we don't really have, like, it feels like the shouts aren't really as impactful. Like, I'm always hitting battle shout, like whenever, just to keep the buff up, like every 30 minutes or whatever, or hour. But our shouts, other than demo shout, really don't feel like really, really cool. Like some playing games like I think Guild Wars 2, you can have builds that are completely around like your shouts, and that's something that has to do with the warrior class in there. But our shouts are a little bit lackluster. I'm not sure exactly how they could change it, but if you're gonna classify a whole group of like spells under like shouts and not have anything that's like super impactful, it doesn't feel that like, oh, now yeah, I'm a shout warrior. It doesn't I don't know. It doesn't really do anything for me from the class fantasy perspective.
In MOP, we didn't have shouts, but we had the banners, right? We had the skull banner, we had the demoralizing banner, and some other stuff as well. So we were a banner warrior. And now we have a bit of both with Necrolord. They kind of try to like do a pseudo skull banner with the first iteration of it, where it increased your crit chance and crit damage dealt. But that was just incredibly lackluster for everybody. But yeah, like we have Battle Shout, Demo Shout, Intimidating Shout with on a 1.5 minute CD, and the Challenging Shout on a 4-minute CD. So on Torghast, you can really only rely on Battle Shout and spamming Demo Shout to get your damage buff going, where you have like this one anima power, which would increase the damage dealt by 30% per power on targets that are afflicted by shouts. So we just cycle through all of it. Yeah. So that something like that would be nice to see, besides Booming Voice, which is obviously the talent that increases the damage dealt to afflicted targets from Demo Shout. So we could see something more along those lines. Yeah, that would be nice as a different customization option.
Was gonna say that Blizzard is the WoW devs are no strangers to picking up things from their Diablo franchise. Like Punish is something that they picked up from Diablo, and a lot of for mages and paladins as well, they picked up skills from Diablo. And if you in Diablo 2, like the Barbarian had a lot of like war cries type builds. So whenever it comes to shouts, we could have something like that, and I don't see why that wouldn't be something cool. And that could be the sigils of PROT warriors, the way that Vengeance has. We could have like multiple.
So you want homogenization?
No, man. I want to yell in game as much as I yell at my monitor as well.
All right. Well,
that being said, one of the coolest things that I do like about Torghast is Rumbling Earth or whatever, the Avalanche ability that they kind of picked up from Diablo 3. I think that's a really cool thing, and I hope that in some iteration that makes it to actually like in retail, not just out of Torghast. Using your leap as a DPS is kind of cool. Yeah, like the Rumbling Earth Avalanche thing.
I love that on my Barbarian D3. I just love that build when it was viable, like jumping, like crumbling and shit.
The thing I want the most is the anima power that makes it where Whirlwind and Thunderclap drag in mobs from like 3 ranged mobs from the 20-yard radius back to you. That in itself has so insane utility and potential, which is also existing in Diablo 3. That's where they initially got it from, like the Deafening Crash rune for Seismic Stomp. That specifically made it into WoW as well, and this would be a very fun thing to use in WoW, and it's pretty unique in that sense and incredibly powerful. I would love to see that happen.
We're kind of getting like to the max limit of what we can post on Spotify, because we don't have premium and shit like that on uploading. So I just wanted to quickly ask you guys if there were like things that weren't covered and you guys wanted to talk about, like last 5 minutes or so.
What I wanted to talk about in the beginning, when Pika mentioned like self-healing tanks and so on, what Panthea and Mendel mentioned last podcast of yours on the BDK podcast was that sure, the BDK looks great on the healing meter because everything the BDK does shows up on the healing meter, right? Because his way of mitigation is healing it back up. When Warrior just blocks the damage, it doesn't pop up anywhere. You just know, okay, his HP didn't move as much, and then that's that. When he mentioned that if you compare the EHRPS of every tank, like the external healing required per second, it's actually still pretty comparable, even between BDK and PROT Warrior and other tanks. Monk is, and in raw damage taken, Monk is the unfought king. They take the most damage, but they don't take spike damage, so that's their good thing. And they also obviously have the Celestial Brew to just ignore this specific mechanic. So in the overall course of a fight, the healing a tank requires should be generally the same. But if you have like this huge spike damage, or like specifically magic damage in a term of BDK, they can shrug it off easier than PROT Warrior, but they then lack in other departments. But most of the tank healing anyway isn't going to be direct healing, right? It's going to be HOTS and Glimmer and what's the beacons mostly.
Yeah.
That's just what I wanted to talk about. Like, if block showed up on the healing meter, the perception would be entirely different of a warrior, honestly.
So we need a section in details with effective healing done, or just to show how much damage block was mitigated.
Don't look how fast Spell Reflect got nerfed after it got showed up.
Yeah, don't give
this.
Blizzard information on the nerf us, okay? I'd rather be under the gun OP than like blatantly the number one thing. That's always an awful place to be.
That's exactly what happened. Once details was on the damage meter through the weak aura, and then later implemented in details, like people got aware, like everybody was shouting, look at this, like 130 KDPS tanks on Wakecrest Manor, third boss. Is like, okay, sure. And then it just got out of control up to the point where in Shadowlands, I just feel sad.
So you're the problem, Nom. You're the problem.
Okay, I see how it is. Nah, but like, I'm just so sad in Shadowlands. So many opportunities where you think, yeah, that should work. I should be able to reflect it. And then you're like, no, it just doesn't. There are a few select bosses. Is like, one of my favorite ones is actually Plaguefall first boss, where Spell Reflect actually works. And it deals back damage to the boss every Plague Stomp. So that's actually a fun interaction. Not broken enough, luckily.
Yeah, but like on that note though, like Plaguefall is the worst warrior dungeon there is out there. Some of the tanks are on Twitter and like, oh, Plaguefall is not that bad now, you know, like we're happy like Plague Warriors aren't a thing, but like warriors, we have no poison and the disease dispel, and Plaguefall is just like such a bad dungeon for warrior in the sense of everything is doing magic damage, everything's doing disease damage. Tanks that like brewmasters, you know, you feel fine because you know you can dispel yourself, you don't have to rely on anybody. But like in my comp specifically, that I run for Mythic Plus, I'm running PROT warrior resto shaman. There's nothing to do with diseases. So diseases that reduce your max health and leave like dots on you are like the most awful thing ever. And I hate dungeons that are designed around that thing. That I need a specific comp because I don't have a diseases spell. I'm just like, well, we're not running this. Good luck.
Last boss, you love to see it. She goes down, you have 4 stacks of the debuff, and you just sit there like, okay, thanks.
Just be a dwarf. What do you mean?
I wish. I miss Alliance. Back in BOD and in BFA, we switched back to Horde because we lacked players for Mythic progression. So I just want to be a dwarf again. I was a dwarf ever since Wrath of the Lich King on my warrior, and I just never switched even once. And then over the course of BFA, I switched like 5 times.
Oh my god!
I wish Avatar made it so we were immune to being rooted during the time we're in Avatar, not just like as a initial thing.
But only as PROT, because in PvP
only
that
as
would
PROT,
be...
because PvP that's like so busted. But as PROT, I wish, you know, because right now it's really lackluster. Because when you hit it and then you get rooted right after, it's like the worst thing.
And then you just stare in the camera. I'm like, okay, I sit here. Please help.
All right. Well, this has been definitely a super fun chat, and you know, as a totally non-PROT warrior player, that's quite insightful, and hopefully for the folks out there who are interested in spec, you know, got some out of it. And I know you 1 or 2 Blizz devs listening out there, you should note some shit down. You know, this is some good information here. It's all from the love of the game, you know, especially for the warrior class, I would say. But that being said, I do want to reiterate that all the links, you know, from Noma, for Pika, for Mwahi will be in the description. On top of, you know, everything, Skyhole Discord, you know, that's like the main source you should get into as well. But if you want to check out the boys individually, check it out in the description. Flame, say something.
Right. Thank you for watching the podcast or listening to the podcast. And thank you guys for agreeing to do this. It was really cool.
Thank you guys.
Pro Warriors, the tank dear to my heart, and hopefully we can do this again. Hopefully later in 9.1, unless it lasts for 8 more months again.
We'll do 3 more podcasts
and see exactly how PROT has developed over the season. If you guys are okay with it.
Absolutely fine by me.
All right, thank you.
We'll chat it out. All right, boys and gals. See you next Monday with a brand new episode on a new spec. Bye bye.
I'ma do it /bow. Still I play WoW. Still I play WoW.